Hello, everyone. Big news today. Holy moly, we just had a giant bit of news dropped on us, and we're going to be covering all this. Let me get my stream set up real quick here. Look a little blown out. Let me fix the colors a little bit too before we get started. Okay. Yeah, it's just kind of bright in the room, so I think it's just going to be that way. Is what it is. I think we're just going to roll with it. Alrighty. So, yeah, huge news today, chat. Welcome, Natalie. Welcome back. Oh, you have to be in the office now? That sucks. But you're here now. And today's your day because guess what? We have new hero talents that have been revealed, and one of them just so happens to affect a certain class that you play. So we're just going to jump right into the article. So here it is. New hero talents revealed. Priest tripling down on power infusion. We're going to talk about this in just a little bit, but we're going to first start with the mage information here. So let's go ahead and let's look over Mage and also get some reacts to the interview as well. I believe there's a Mage interview we can watch. We'll try and find that as well so we can react to it. But first, let's just take a look at what they said about Frostfire Mage and also what's actually in the talents here. Okay, so for Fire and Frost Mage, actually, I might give it a little bit for people to kind of show up because I just put out the feelers. But yeah, we're going to jump right into this. Give me just a second. I'm also going to see if maybe I can get someone to talk about this with me. I think ideally... Yeah, hold on. I'm reaching out to some folks. Give me just a second here. Okay. Actually, let's start with Priest, because that'll give us a nice little warm-up, and that'll let people kind of get over here for the Mage stuff, and I don't want to start in that just yet. I want to give people just a little bit of time to get over here. Anyways, yeah, we'll start with Priest. So, looking at the Priest talents, we're just going to take it in. Okay, so here are the Oracle talents, and I already kind of have an idea of what they're doing with this, but I'm going to act like I don't. Like we're just seeing this for the first time. Okay, so Oracle is the new hero talent set up for Priest. This is for Holy and Discipline, so it's only available to the healing specs, yeah. And then they have Premonition here. So Premonition replaces Power Infusion. It's a 1-minute cooldown. It says that you gain access to spells that have advantage here against your fate. And it looks like they're taking this as like a huge opportunity to maybe add more support elements. Now, of course, this is a healing spec, right? So it's not quite the same as Augmentation, because Augmentation, of course, is a support DPS spec. So a little bit of a different situation there. But the healing spec being the support, it's a little bit different because you don't typically expect healers to be providing that role. But anyways, so yeah, Divine the Future, gain access to a spell that gives you an advantage against your fate. So Solace is going to be increases your target's healing received by 25% for 10 seconds. Insight increases your target's magic damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. And Glory increases your target's physical damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. I'm assuming it just depends on who you put it on, right? So if it's like a tank, it'd probably be Solace. If it's a DPS who deals primarily physical damage, probably Glory, Insight, or maybe you get to choose. I'm not sure. But either way, pretty interesting that you're giving someone a damage buff for 10 seconds. Okay, so on the left side, Preventive Measures increases holy damage, absorbed by Power Word Shield by 10%, healing done. Standard healing throughput increase. Power Word Shield, or Shed? Power Word, is this supposed to be Shield? I think that's a typo. Power Word Shield applies 1 stack of Prayer Mending to your target. Prayer Mending casts apply Power Word Shield to your target at 20% effectiveness. More healing throughput. So the whole left side, it looks like is just healing throughput. More Power Word Shield stuff. Also at 150 stacks, gain additional charge of Premonition. So that's this ability up here. So the more you heal, it looks like you're going to be able to get those back. And then also we have Preemptive Care, increases the duration of Atonement by 1 second. Atonement is going to be like the way that they ramp typically. So More kind of throughput-oriented stuff reduces the cooldown of Purify, or when an ally walks through your Angelic Feather, you're granted 100% of its effects. So this is just you giving yourself Feather whenever someone else takes it from you, which is, I mean, both of these are like probably not too relevant, but I guess Priest does kind of struggle with movement, so this is kind of nice. But again, Feathers doesn't really feel like it's really fitting the slot that's empty when it comes to Priest movement, so maybe not. And then also reduces the cooldown of Premonition, or Premonition can now trigger the balance and urgency effects. So you have restores 5% of the target's maximum mana, or increases your target's haste by 12% for 10 seconds. So like, this is crazy because you're basically giving them PI plus a 10% buff. And then we have over here on the right, Premonition causes your next Power Word Radiance, Heal, Prayer of Healing to be instant cast and costs less mana, reduces the cooldown of Power Word Life by 3 seconds. Pain Suppression reduces damage taken. Guardian Spirit lasts additional time, all throughput oriented, but they all have a tie-in with Premonition. Increase the duration of Premonition by 2 seconds, so that's going to be instead of 10, it's going to be now up to 12. 12 seconds on urgency as well, and the effect is increased by 30% if the divine spell is different than the previous Premonition. So basically, if you change it, you'll get 30% increase. The effect being increased by 30% is probably going to also affect this as well, the Versatile Divination. So I expect that would bring... So that's going to be 4% added onto here. So that would bring like PI basically back up to its normal level. And that would increase your damage done by, what was it? Like 13% instead of 10%. So pretty big, pretty big. And then also because like it says you're going to have charges of Premonition, I'm assuming this is something that you're going to be using quite frequently. It's a 1 minute cooldown and it's going to have charges and it's up for 12 seconds. So it's definitely going to be a big part of your play. And then down here, Premonition has a low chance to grant you Clairvoyance, grants your target and 2 nearby allies all the effects of Premonition at 100% effectiveness. So it's your target and 2 nearby allies. That's literally Ebon Might, but just up less. Because you're straight up throwing out like power infusions like they're candy, and they're going to constantly be splashing on nearby people. That's like the same design as Ebon Might. It's just, it has less cooldown, like, or it has like less uptime because it's a longer cooldown, but yeah, that's really interesting. I don't really like how they're approaching this. I don't like PI. I don't like these support buffs, and it seems like they're like really leaning into it. So let's read what they put on Wowhead here. So regarding the priest talents, here's the write-up we have from Wowhead. Okay, so yeah. Is there any editorial part of this? I think this is all just written out. Oh, here we go. We have some interviews. Okay, cool. So priest interview, we'll react to this one first. Okay, so let's see where the interview begins. Are they just... They should be also interviewing. Here it is. By the way, chat, let me know if... Oh, George Phillip. Yeah, I interviewed him about the Evoker stuff. That's cool. Let's turn this up and let me know if you can hear it just fine.
All about it. Before we do, can we get some...
Is that loud enough, chat, or should we go a little higher? Let's actually nudge this up just a smidge.
Introductions from everyone on the call.
Small priest. I'm from Germany. I'm 23.
I think that's maybe a little too low still. Maybe here.
And I've been playing WoW for...
Oh, Salder's in this one too. Cool. Okay, so yeah, they're going to do introductions here.
Maybe 6-7 years, and been maining Discipline Priest for the majority of that. And I've been a member of the Priest Discord for most of the time. And yeah, just doing the day-to-day to help people out there, mostly in the Discipline channel.
And Clandon?
Yeah, I've been playing WoW for a very long time, but I've been playing Priest for about since early Legion.
I'm not gonna react to the introductions. I'm gonna let them do their introductions. But once we actually get to the content, I'm gonna start reacting to it. Just to be clear, I don't want to talk over them while they're introducing themselves.
Ben, I'm the owner of Warcraft Priest and very heavily involved in helping out a lot of newbie priests learn Discipline mainly.
Hi, I'm Zelda. I do a lot of WoW theory crafting in my free time, so people may know me from all sorts of places, not just the priest section. I primarily do Shadow, but I do a lot of Discipline stuff as well.
So pretty Discipline Priest heavy here today. You'll be pleased to know. Let's say hello to the devs in this call as well.
Been playing WoW since
George Phillip.
Wrath. So happy to be here. Happy to chat about Oracle.
How you doing? I'm Rodney Perret. I'm a combat designer on the WoW team. I've been playing WoW since vanilla. I've played mainly priest since BC, bit of shaman. Yeah, happy to be here. Excited to talk about this.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna skip ahead here. Let's talk about premonition. Let's get
Or
their
you
take.
want to power up some of your visions of the future.
That tree because they want to.
Sure. I
No,
can
no,
answer.
no. I haven't actually got to mage. We're gonna do mage in just a second. We're gonna very quickly cover the priest talents because this has implications on everything, and then we'll talk about mage in just a moment.
Answer that. First, if someone is interested in the fantasy of the tree, then we're excited to fulfill the fantasy of receiving visions of the future and using those visions to take care of those around you. Mechanically, choose Oracle if you're excited about the new gameplay mechanic with premonition, or you want to power up some of your more preemptive spells with priest, like Powered Shield, Guardian Spirit, Suppression, things like that.
Yo, Dubertus. Appreciate the sub. Welcome. So no support spec at launch, but specs are getting support stuff. Keck W. Yep, that is the feeling I'm getting.
Yeah, I think Rodney nailed it.
Brilliant. So you mentioned premonition there, which is the major feature and mechanic of the Oracle class. Could you talk us through a little bit of your inspiration behind it as an idea?
So premonition isn't just random buffs. It has them listed here. I'm pretty sure it just depends on what you put it on, like what kind of class. But we'll listen to what they have to say. But it seems like there's 3 different flavors: physical, magic damage, and healing taken. To me, this screams ranged caster, melee, and tank.
Sort of where it comes from, because it does seem to be pushing priest into I don't want to say this word, but like a more kind of supportive.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Another support spec? I thought they said they weren't going to be doing this.
Sort of gameplay style for that hero talent tree.
Sure, yeah. So the way we approach all the hero talent tree designs is we sat down, we talked about, what's a really cool fantasy we can explore for these classes. For priests, we kind of landed, like Ronnie mentioned, on peering into the future, using that knowledge to protect your allies or
Okay.
bolster them.
So
That felt
time-based
like a really
magic too.
fun, unique spin on priests that we've been done before. So we pursued it. And now that we figured out what Oracle started with thematically, we were like, well, how can we deliver that? And we landed on premonition. And it's certainly one of the more ambitious hero talent concepts, I think. We know it might get some.
So since he's saying it's one of the more ambitious ones, it probably means it's almost like an outlier in the terms of their design for them. It probably means it's a little bit further out there than what you should expect in other ones.
Immediate reactions, but we really feel sort of comfortable where it's at, and we want to see how it resonates with players. And ultimately, if it is feeling a little bit too divisive or too complicated, we plan on acting on that feedback and learning how we deliver that fantasy. Let's sort of set the record straight. Premonition is one variant that we're exploring for Oracle. We have other variants in mind, since we understand that premonition can be a little bit too much for players. But this is a version that we're happy with right now. We want to share with players.
Okay, so it sounds like they're very hesitant to be yeah, this is going to be the basically the design that we're putting forward. They're essentially saying that don't expect this to be happening elsewhere. This is kind of an experimental thing. I mean, in a way, it's kind of the same messaging they had with augmentation, but I think it's interesting that it's time-based magic and augmentation is also time-based magic, and both of them tie into support.
And get their feedback on. Sorry, I didn't answer your question fully. Regarding the sort of support space, we felt like offering a little bit of support flavor to healing spec by hero talent trees didn't feel super unheard of. I mean, you're still a healer fundamentally. It's just a little bit of seasoning on top of what you're already enjoying.
Okay, let me just throw it out there. I think if they're going to do support specs, I think this is the correct way to do it. I don't think having the DPS be the support, or at least the way that augmentation works, I don't think that that's really the best design for the game, especially now that we've seen augmentation for multiple patches. I think it's way better to try and tie those elements into a role that isn't focused on damage, personally. But I also don't really know how I feel about them being in the game, in general. Not really a huge fan of Power Infusion, and having Power Infusion just be more kind of makes me sad to think about that. But okay, we'll keep an open mind.
So my mind just goes back to BlizzCon and a number of interviews that we conducted and watched as well with devs in the wake of that when hero talents were announced. And a lot of people asked, would you be using hero talents as a way to kind of give other classes and specs a more supportive style? And we were told categorically no, that was not something that the devs were thinking about doing at all on every occasion. This does seem to be walking that back a little bit in terms of the scale of a discipline priest to an augmentation evoker. Where does Oracle kind of land on that scale, would you say, in terms of support?
I mean, it really shouldn't be going so far as to say that it's fully support spec. Hero talents fundamentally aren't going to change your role. You're still a disc priest. You're still a holy priest. You're just a little bit more of a support-oriented holy priest or disc priest. It should just be a little bit more flavor on top of what you're already enjoying. I mean, you're still a healer. Premonition also isn't the only button as an oracle. You still have, you know, the gamut of...
I'd be really curious to know how much throughput they actually expect to like have come from these talents, because I suspect they want all of the healers to do like equal damage, right? So like if you're buffing DPS by this much, you probably don't do any damage on your own, or at least that's what I would expect, right? If every healer is supposed to be tuned around kind of having the same role, healing roughly the same amount, although the healing comes out in different ways, and providing the same amount of like raid damage as a baseline, I feel like something like this is going to make you just like way better than the other healers, unless you don't really have damage coming from yourself. But like no matter what, this is going to be better because this is a force multiplier. You can use this with augmentation. You can use this with like burst windows. It's going to be better than having a healer that just like does their damage by like applying Moonfire, right? Like there's no way you can balance these two, in my opinion. I don't see how you can balance something like this. Again, it's early, but I'm just saying I have concerns. Okay.
Priest abilities at your kit. It's just there to sort of give that gameplay, or a little bit of that gameplay, to players who sort of want to be more support oriented. I guess the question is sort of why priest? It's the only class that really has 2 healers. We want to try something a little bit new with hero talents, and we thought it was worth pursuing. Healers, like I mentioned, are already in sort of that supportive role, so adding a little bit more support into their kit felt worth exploring.
Cool. I'd like to look at the premonition talent itself a little bit more, and I know that Small Priest has got some questions about that.
Yeah, exactly. So when we first got to read through them, we had a lot of ideas how it could actually work out when you're actually playing the spell. So it would be nice for you guys to just kind of straight up tell us, how does it actually work? Do you just cast it on an ally and you get a buff based on what kind of ally it is, DPS, or is it a dex system? Just
you thought how it worked may not be how it actually works. So
we've actually got a bet going on this, just so you know.
So,
okay, how's it work?
Some of us are going to be happy.
Okay.
Did we not got on the spec? Come on.
Every second, the current available spell will change to the next one, and it's going to be in a set order, with the first one being random. So, let's say you only have the initial talents, it'll go like Solace, Insight, Glory, Solace, Insight, Glory between those, and then if you ever press the button the second time, it'll cast whatever spell is currently available. So you can basically choose which buff you want for the situation.
Okay, I did not bet.
I lost the bet, so interview.
So you're just always going to choose either. Well, it's always going to be magic damage, because with like DPS, physical damage, they're going to be like mixing their physical with magic. I guess maybe there might be a case where physical might make sense, like for hunters, maybe like marksmanship. But I think generally you'll just want insight. I don't see a situation where you wouldn't just want insight every time, because if you can put insight on someone who only deals magic damage, you're buffing 100% of their damage by 13% potentially. Whereas if you're buffing a melee, you may not be getting all their damage, right? Like very few melee have all of their damage coming from physical. Most of them have it split. But since you're only getting one of the buffs, and since it's cycling, you can choose, you're just going to hit insight every time.
Use over the line.
Or else you're just splitting your damage.
Good to know. Then, so you just
okay, that's very interesting.
You still need to test that a lot, but every second.
No, poisons are nature damage, so no, they're magical.
And it'll swap between the spells right now.
So you cast the spell once, and then once you cast the spell, it cycles until you cast it again. Is there a duration on that, or does it continue to cycle until you choose which spell you're getting?
There's a duration. I think currently we're aiming for about 12 seconds of it going through the cycle.
12 seconds. Okay.
Enough to get a couple cycles worth so that you don't miss the one you wanted.
Does the cooldown start when you first press it, or when you actually pick a spell and then cast it on an ally?
Currently, it starts right when you press it, and then while it's like, we don't want to put pressure on you to cast it as soon as possible. So
yeah, so the cooldown starts when you start the casino machine. So you're always going to choose insight.
Yeah, it'll start as soon as you press the button.
That makes sense. Then another thing I'm going to assume is probably the case. Is it also off GCD, like Power Infusion?
Yep, it's off GCD.
Okay, that makes sense. Is it castable on yourself, all of the buffs, or is it only on an ally?
It is castable.
Okay, here's another thing that's a little awkward. Remember how we have that talent, like this one down here, that says we have Clairvoyance, grants your target and 2 nearby allies all the effects of premonition at 100% effectiveness? That definitely adds a wrinkle to this, yeah, because all of the effects is physical and magic and healing received. That would definitely be good for most melee, right? Because you're getting all the effects. Wow, it's so much better to be the person who gets clairvoyance than the other stuff. Although I guess if this procs all three targets get all 3 buffs, but still, it's interesting that the target that you choose for this might actually be influenced by your clairvoyance, because I don't see a world where you're putting like a glory or insight on a class that has split damage. But what if they're the best class for it, but you have to get the clairvoyance proc? What's the proc chance on that? It says a low chance, so you probably wouldn't gamble that. But that's interesting.
On anyone, including yourself, and it does work with Twins of the Sun Priestess. Yeah.
So it would grant you the same buff that you grant an ally.
Not exactly. So if you cast Glory on an ally, what I want to do is have it cast a more valuable one on you, because that's a melee focused buff. So it'll cast Insight likely on you.
I don't understand why they're making it work like this. It should just be increases your damage dealt by 10%. It should, like, I don't get why they're adding this additional hoop. I feel like this design needs to just be 10%. Like flat. If they're going to keep it like this, I feel like having it be split like this is a little weird. They're adding like these weird caveats so it like picks the right one, but like just make it work for everyone.
But we're still figuring out some of those nuances, but we didn't want it to be best to just cast the Insight one to
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
As far as clairvoyance goes, we don't have any initial plans to prevent any pre-pull stuff. People are going to want to cast it before the pull as just like a normal behavior, so we don't want to prevent that. If it does become something like a common behavior or something that you guys feel like, hey, it's too powerful, we need it before the pull, then it's something we can bring back to the team to discuss.
Okay.
I would say likewise with the cycle of
This should also reset on boss pull, kind of like Eben might. That's probably the best way to handle it, or else it's going to be kind of a nightmare for pre-pull.
abilities kind of going through. Do those go through when you're not in combat as well? Because there's going to be fishing for those before a pull too.
Yeah, and I'm more okay with the fishing before the pull. Choose the one you want to get, but definitely accepting feedback on the cadence as well. Like if you feel like, hey, I don't have any time to do the mechanic, that'd be good to know as well. Because it's currently at about a second, so interested in what you think about that.
I think that's
My prediction is they're probably going to move away from this like rotation thing. I feel like that seems like it's flavor. I get that, but I feel like it's going to be just a lot of trouble for really very little feeling. It's just a fantasy thing. I don't know.
it's just going to have to see how it feels mid combat when you're paying attention to other stuff as well.
Yeah, some big weak auras. That it kind of procs per encounter, and I know that there's a lot of worry when we were talking about
what's
it,
the proc rate?
You know, in some scenarios, a priest might get one clairvoyance in a boss fight, or sometimes kind of multiple. Are you okay with only procking once per boss fight, or?
So we're not tied to a specific cooldown right now. We want it to feel great when it does proc, but like you mentioned, we know that Trick to land that perfectly. The sort of the design of clairvoyance is something that we're happy with, and we feel it's pretty compelling and worth exploring. But if it doesn't feel great, or if it feels sort of too impactful, or if you feel like you need clairvoyance at this time to really kill a boss, that's really good feedback to hear, and feedback that we'll take back and discuss. Ultimately, really shouldn't.
So during like a damage amp, whenever everyone's in their cooldowns, the difference between getting procs, like if you use it twice in a row and you proc both times, that's 6 targets buffed versus 2 targets buffed. I feel like that's a little crazy. The difference there is a little bit crazy. That's going to definitely make the difference between if you push or not. Imagine a scenario like the damage shield on Tindral Sage Swift, right? Where you have a damage amp and you have to break the absorb shield in time. The difference between proccing 2 casts in a row versus proccing 0 times in that damage window is going to be the difference between pushing the shield in time or not pushing the shield in time whenever you're early in progression.
Be such a big,
because that's a big amount of damage difference.
Part of your Oracle kit. It's just one of many talents. Premonition really should be sort of the focus on clairvoyance.
Would you expect there to be big swings in the priest's kind of throughput or sort of numbers from pull to pull with clairvoyance procs? Or
that's something that we're exploring. I don't know if we could say if we expect big swings either way, but if the feedback that we're getting is clairvoyance is going to lead to big swings, that's really good to know, and it's kind of sounding like that may be the case. So
yeah, I mean it's 3x, right? Like of course it's going to be big.
Cool.
Okay, at least they're aware of it.
On the subject of kind of throughput and sort of priest numbers, I know Clandon has got some questions on that.
Yeah, which a lot of the original questions on this were off of a different assumption. So I think a lot of these questions are in regards to personal throughput gain with Premonition are not really as relevant now that we know that you kind of have a little bit of control in regards to cycling through that deck and picking the one you want. Especially knowing, one of my big questions here was going to be Glory providing no personal value for a priest if you get it through Twins of the Sun Priestess. So if you guys have a system in place for smartly giving the priest a different buff when they cast Glory on an ally, then that kind of covers that issue. For something like Insight, having a fairly big difference in.
Okay, I don't want to
Uh,
focus too
and
much on
that's
this mage
really
stuff
fun.
because
What
I think the
players
rest of
feel
it's
is appro-
like probably pretty straightforward. We could just like look at the talents. I pretty much just wanted to get their take about like what the design intent was. Yeah, not a huge fan of more support elements being added to the fight. Not a huge fan of them doubling down on PI and especially making it a casino jackpot if you hit the 3x PI. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. Okay, so let's talk about mage stuff. All right, so the specialization that we're talking about today is frostfire. It says frostfire mages harness a fusion of fire and ice magic to burn and freeze their enemies. Their elemental magic empowers them, enabling devastating combinations of spellcasting, increasing their output by manipulating temperatures. So it seems to be about changing the temperatures, merging fire and frost. 1 second. I'm looking over it now. Okay, I think I might actually have someone really awesome to talk about this with. Okay, so yeah, anyways, we're merging the temperatures, we're manipulating that stuff. It's going to be frost and fire. A little awkward, though, with the naming convention. Frostfire, fire mage, frostfire, frost mage. I think that's a little strange how that rolls out. But anyways, okay, so frostfire mastery is our first one, and these are always the most important ones to kind of talk about because they kind of inform the entire rest of the tree. Kind of everything hinges on this first talent up here. So frostfire mastery is your damaging fire spells generate 1 stack of fire mastery, frost spells generate 1 stack of frost mastery. So we have something called mastery for each one that we are building stacks on. Fire mastery increases your haste by 1%, and frost mastery increases your mastery by 1% for 12 seconds, stacking up to 8 times. Adding stacks does not refresh duration. Oh, that is very interesting. Okay, so you're going to increase it, but you can either go one way or the other, and it's going to fall off after 12 seconds, and it goes up to 8 stacks. So if you do a global every single time for one of the fire types, you're going to have potentially 8% of whatever that stat is versus 8% of the other stat, or maybe a mix of the two. That's interesting. Okay. All right. So on the left-hand column, start over here. So we have a choice node between Imbued Warding and Meltdown. Imbued Warding, Fire, Blazing Barrier, also casts Ice Barrier at 25% effectiveness. This also affects your Mass Barrier. Okay, interesting. And then for Frost, it is Ice Barrier, also casts Blazing Barrier. So you're just getting 25% more shield, and you're getting the benefits of the shield. But since neither of these shields really have that big of a benefit in terms of what they actually do for you, like in a raid setting or like a Mythic Plus setting, they're not Precise Barrier. They're not the Arcane one. The Arcane one would actually be super worthwhile to have this on because you would get the reduction on the duration of debuffs. You'd get the magic damage taken reduction. That's not going to be the case, but I guess it will slow. Either way, slow, deal slight melee damage whenever people melee you. The other option is Meltdown. You melt slightly out of your Ice Block and Ice Cold, allowing you to move slowly during Ice Block and increasing your movement speed over time. Ice Block and Ice Cold trigger a Blast Wave when they end. Okay, so this is allowing you to... It's allowing you to move in your Ice Block so you can kind of move your feats. And then during Ice Cold, you're just going to have a slight speed increase. So you're basically weighing the option between having 25% more Absorb Shield versus having a slight mobility increase. And then the Blast Wave, which I feel like that in PvP is going to be really nuts. But, okay. I mean, I definitely would just take Imbued Warding, just based on what I can see here. But maybe the speed increase is really huge. I don't know. Maybe it's worth it. Could be situational. Okay, and then we have Isothermic Core. Comet Storm now calls down a Meteor at 100% effectiveness on your target's location. Holy shit, okay. So Meteor is actually not flagged as a spell that removes Shatter for Frost. So this is actually insane for Frost, because this means that you're going to have a Meteor hitting at 100% effectiveness at your target's location. That's going to be shattering due to Winter's Chill on your Flurry. Which means that if you use Comet Storm the way you should, which is you Flurry and then you Comet Storm during the Flurry, you're going to get a lot more value out of that Meteor than you did previously. And it says Meteor also calls down the Comet Storm at 150% effectiveness on your target. Okay, so for Fire, it's like kind of minimal. I mean, it's just more damage on your Meteor. That's nice. It's a nice little buff to Meteor. We like Meteor. Meteor's a fun talent. But the implication here is that you're also increasing the value of the already super overpowered fire talent that we take Living Bomb for, even in single target Firefall, but maybe the talents will change. Okay. Moving on from there, we have Excess Frost. So for fire, reaching maximum stacks of Frost Mastery causes your next Phoenix Flame to also cast Ice Nova at 200% effectiveness. When you consume Excess Frost, the cooldown of Meteor is reduced. Oh, okay. And then we also have Frost. Reaching maximum stacks of Frost Mastery causes your next Flurry to also cast Ice Nova at 200% effectiveness. Same spell. Interesting. I was expecting maybe Blast Wave, but anyways. When you consume Excess Frost, the cooldown of Comet Storm is reduced. In either case, it's nice. Nice little cooldown reduction on your Comet Storm. Nice little cooldown reduction on your Meteor. And it gives you an incentive to actually max out your opposite stack for whatever spec you're playing. Okay, we'll talk about Frostfire Bolt next. So this is obviously the most important part of this, right? This is the key component. So Frostfire Bolt replaces Frostbolt and replaces Fireball. So both specs are going to be using the same builder. Launches a bolt of Frostfire at the enemy, dealing Frostfire damage, slowing movement by 50%, causing additional Frostfire damage over 8 seconds. Frostfire Bolt generates a stack of both Frost and Fire Mastery. So yeah, this is going to be the primary way that you get your Frost stacks then as a Fire Mage, and it's going to be how you get your Fire stacks as a Frost Mage. Pretty straightforward. This also means that you're probably going to have, actually, so my initial estimation was like you'd have like one maxed out with a little bit of change in the other one. It's probably going to be more like you... yeah, actually, that's probably accurate, because you're going to be casting like Frostfire Bolt a lot, but it won't be like the only thing you're casting. It's also a 2-second cast. What is the cast time on Fireball? I don't remember offhand. I think it's actually the same. What's the cast time on Fireball? 2.25 seconds. Okay, so it's slightly shorter than Fireball, actually. I think with talents, though, probably be about the same. Yeah. Okay. And then we have a choice note. Severe temperatures versus thermal conditioning. Frostfire Bolt's cast time is reduced by 10%. Or we have casting frost or fire spells increases the damage of your next Frostfire Bolt by 6%, stacking up to 5 times. Okay. So like for fire, I could see in combustion where you don't really cast your Frostfire Bolt a lot because you're going to be mainly doing like Pyroblast, Fireblast, Pyroblast, Fireblast, Phoenix Flames, all that stuff. You would probably end up building up a really nice fatty Frostfire Bolt. And then at 5 stacks, I mean, that's 30% increase, right? So that's a pretty nice little damage increase. Or you could just have reduced cast time. Yeah, this is interesting. I think this is going to make it so that we, I don't know, actually. This is really interesting. I don't know how much damage the spell does. I would need to know how much damage the spell actually does to know how good Severe Temperatures is. It's going to depend on the tuning on Frostfire Bolt as to which one of these is going to be better, but I could see it situationally being either or, but I'm going to lean towards just like Thermal Conditioning permanently because that's just 10% less time spent on your builders. So there's 2 considerations. Number 1 is the total time you spend using your builder. Number 2 is the damage coefficient of your builder. And if it ends up being a better damage per execute time if you have higher stacks to the point where you would actually want to prioritize building stacks and using that as part of your core rotation. But this is interesting. We'll have to see more. Definitely a little tantalizing there. Okay, so Frostfire Empowerment. Your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, causing your next Frostfire Bolt to always critically strike. Okay, another component kind of helping severe temperatures here. Always critically strike, it's spelling for 80% of its damage to nearby enemies and be instant cast. Okay, so that also makes the cast time reduced here as well. The only thing that actually kind of synergizes here with Thermal Conditioning is with Thermal Conditioning, you should have more casts. Therefore, you'll have more, on average, chances to have this become empowered. So I could still see it going either way. Would need to see the numbers. Okay, and then over here, Elemental Affinity. So the cooldown of Frost spells is reduced by 10%. The cooldown of Fire spells is reduced by 30%. Cooldown of Fire spells is reduced by 30%. What fire spells are Frost using? Dragon's Breath, Fire Blast, but it's not really worth using because it's like not cast while casting. What else? What other fire spells would Frost use? Hold on. Let's just explore a little bit. I think that's I think it's Blast Wave. I think it's Dragon's Breath. I think it is Fire Blast on the current talents. Maybe they add more. Yeah, that's... I feel like Fire gets like a way better deal on this one. Because like having your frost spells reduced is sick, because that means your ice block is reduced. That means your... I believe Ice Flows is also considered a frost spell. Let me just see. Ice Flows. I think this is a frost spell. I'll need to double check that. So what school is Ice Flows a part of? It is Frost. Okay, so that would actually reduce the cooldown of your Ice Flows too. Very interesting. A 10% reduced. So that just means more cast while casting. Fire's already extremely mobile, and that could really make Ice Flows like even better. And then the other option is, well, before we get too excited about Elemental Affinity, let's talk about Flame and Frost here. Okay, Cauterize resets the cooldown of your Frost spells with a base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes when it activates. Wait, base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes. So that's not Ice Block. You wouldn't get Ice Block back, because it's Ice Block is 4 minutes, but you would get your other Frost spells back. So that would be Ice Flows, Frost Nova, Cone of Cold, Frost, yeah, I said Ice Nova already. Ring of Frost, Frost Nova, yeah. It's not Ice Block, no. No, it says very specifically here. It says base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes, so it would not affect Ice Block. And then for Frost, you have Cold Snap additionally resets the cooldown on your fire spells. Okay, that is crazy. Would it reset? Wait, can you get Cauterize as Frost? If you can get Cauterize as Frost, this actually might be insane. Either way, though, I'm still like thinking Fire is getting kind of a nice little increase here, and Frost like, it's okay, but like, god damn, dude. This is so nice. The Cauterize resetting the cooldown. I think I'd still probably go with cooldown reduction, though. But I'd have to know what spells this actually activates. There might be something I'm not thinking of. The base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes. Base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes. Okay. Frostfire Infusion. Your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to trigger additional bolt of Frostfire, dealing Frostfire damage. The effect generates Frostfire Mastery when active. Okay. So all of your spells have a chance to just shoot off a bolt of Frostfire. Okay, that is interesting. So that means you're going to passively generate stacks even if you are not casting Frostfire Bolt. Which means that this one over here actually gains a lot of value compared to Thermal Conditioning, because you're going to be randomly getting, assuming that this works with severe temperatures, you're going to be randomly getting increased damage. And then you're going to be spending it. That way you don't cap out at 5. So this is probably another reason to maybe put more stock into severe temperatures. Again, we'll have to see the tuning. But this is actually this one seems interesting. I like this one. This is cool. Seems better in the PvP setting. Yeah, whole tree seems like it's almost like the PvP talent tree. Yeah, I mean, kind of. I think good talents. I think a hallmark of like a good hero talent tree so far would be like talents that seem relevant in PvP and PvE. So I think that's okay. And I think that's the design intent as well. Okay, so excess fire. So fire. Reaching maximum stacks of fire mastery causes your next fire blast to apply living bomb at 150% effectiveness. When this living bomb explodes, reduce the cooldown of Phoenix Flame by 10 seconds. Okay. Frost. Reaching maximum stacks of fire mastery causes your next ice lance to apply living bomb. When living bomb explodes, gain brain freeze. Okay, so that's another fire spell I guess I hadn't considered, is living bomb. Although that one's on the fire tree, so I'm guessing they're going to be moving that. I really want to see the mage talents. Like, where are the mage talents? I want to see the mage talents, because this is making me think that we're getting some differences. Stuff's going to be moving around. It could proc without the talent, sure, but I feel like there's some hints here. But anyways, reaching maximum stacks of fire mastery calls the next fire blast to apply living bomb. The proc rate on this is probably going to be about once per 12 seconds. I think at the highest it could be as once per 12 seconds. So that would be a living flame every 12 seconds at 150% effectiveness. It's something. It's something. Definitely nice for like the current design of the Ignite build. And then, okay, so we have Flash Freeze Burn. Frostfire Empowerment gives you maximum benefit of Frostfire Mastery and refreshes its duration. Wait, hold on. Let me reread this. Frostfire Empowerment, which is this one right here. Your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, causing your next Frostfire bolt to always critically strike, explode for 80% of its damage to nearby allies, and be instant cast. So whenever this procs, you get the maximum benefit of Frostfire Mastery, and it refreshes duration. Activating Combustion or Icy Veins grants you Frostfire Empowerment. Okay. So whenever you press your Combustion, your Fireball will be instant cast. So I think you're probably going to... I mean, with the current design, you would still press Combustion while you're casting, and then you would finish your cast with a Hot Streak, so you'd have both of those crit at the same time, and then return a Hot Streak, and then you'd Pyroblast again, but then right after that, you would press Frostfire Bolt as like your next spell, and that's gonna... well, it'll crit, but, you know, you're gonna be guaranteed to crit because of Combustion. And then go back to the rest of your rotation there. Icy Veins grants you Frostfire Empowerment. I think this talent tree is actually pretty solid. It's definitely pretty interesting. I think one thing that's actually really cool, definitely the thing that makes me most excited so far, is Isothermic Core. Because having the ability to call down a meteor as frost, like on command, during a shatter window with meteor being whitelisted, seems really strong. It's not like, I mean, these talents aren't like making me excited enough to be like, oh, this is the best thing, but like they're lukewarm to me. I think they're fine. So far, I would say that I like these more than the Chrono Ward ones for augmentation. I like these more than the Oracle one for Priest. So if we're looking at the other talent trees so far, I think that this one's probably the best one I've seen so far. But I don't like the RNG elements here. I like that this guarantees it with your cooldown, but I don't like that... Well, it's a little ambiguous, right? Because it says activating Combustion grants you Frostfire Empowerment. Well, is SKB activating Combustion, or is it like strictly casting Combustion? I think the wording here is interesting. Activating Combustion. To me, that implies you would have to do it from the spell, but I'm not sure. It could go either way. Very interesting. So what all... Okay, let's rewind a little bit. What all is affected by increasing your stacks to the maximum? Over here, excess frost. Reaching maximum stacks of Frost Mastery causes your next Phoenix Flame to cast Ice Nova. Cooldown reduction also applies here. You've got the... Yeah, so this is cooldown reduction for Meteor and Comet Storm. You've also got chance to deal additional bolts of Frostfire. That's just going to be natively going out. That doesn't have anything to do with reaching max stacks, though. You've also got the damage increase also not having to deal with the mastery stacks. I don't like that they use the word mastery because I feel like that's a little confusing. And then you've also got reaching maximum stacks of mastery causes your next Fire Blast to apply Living Bomb. So on both sides, you're having things that are affected by reaching max stacks. On this side, the Frost max stacks versus Fire max stacks. But you're going to be applying Ice Novas, and you're going to be doing Living Bombs too. And both of those are going to be going out. Can I send a link? Yeah. When the Living Bomb explodes, you reduce your cooldown on Phoenix Flame versus when the Living Bomb explodes, you gain a Brain Freeze. That sounds way better. But it's when it explodes. It's not when you generate it. So that's a little awkward, right? Because you have to wait like, what, 12 seconds for Living Bomb to actually explode? Whereas I actually think it's reduced by your haste. Over 4 seconds, then it's splitting. Okay, so it's only like 4 seconds, but I think that's actually reduced by haste. So it'd be like maybe 2 globals, and then they'll pop. Very interesting. Yeah, chat, I don't know how you feel about these. I'm a bit lukewarm on this. I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's probably the best of the hero talents I've seen so far when it comes to the hero talents we've had revealed. I haven't really looked at the hunter ones, but I have seen the priest, I've seen the augmentation ones. Some things excite me here. I like frostfire bolt being a thing again, but most of this stuff, if you really condense it down, is just like more uptime, right? More uptime stuff. Like, oh, you get buffs that you build up and you need to track. Okay. Well, fire already has like so many uptime buffs that you're tracking that you're trying to keep up all at the same time. And now you have another one added to the mix. More stacks, more maintenance buffs. I do like the procs for instant casts. That is fun. That's going to make fire even more mobile than it was before. I would be curious to know if this frostfire infusion, this better not eat this proc, right? Like, there's no way that this proc is going to eat this thing, yeah? If it does, it needs to be, that would need to be looked at. I would expect them to change that, because it would be super lame if, like, your instant cast just got eaten up because you procced an additional bolt. I expect this to work more like an icicle. The effect generates frostfire mastery when active, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the RNG elements of it. I don't like that it's pushing potentially fire like more into uptime, even more than it currently is, but it's still exciting. Like, this is fun stuff. These are cool talents. I like them. Let's hear what the devs have to say, and then we're going to actually have a little chat with Dorvan, who is the Frost Mage guide writer for Wowhead. And we're going to talk about these because it also affects his spec since he's talking about Frost Mage. But first, let's bring up the video.
Especially on
Brazilian content creator for World of Warcraft, only World of Warcraft. It goes without saying that I love this game so much. So one more time, thank you for this interview. Thank you to make this happen.
I'm James, but I've been at Blizzard for a little over 8.
Sorry, I just want to skip ahead just so we can get into the action.
Hello there, I'm Rodney Perret. I'm also a combat designer on the World of Warcraft team.
Oh, we already saw him introduce himself.
That is a lot of trust to me my way, all right?
You're way better in English than I would be in Portuguese, so you're.
Oh, thank you for this. So the Mage in Warlord of the Draenor has had a
Sorry, I have to just stop it for a second. Man, Terros, this is like a blast from the past, dude.
skill that I love very much. I think it's pretty cool. That was the Frostfire bolts, right?
Yeah, Frostfire bolts
in
cool.
Warlord of Draenor, the Mage had this. In this interview, we're gonna speak about the Frostfire hero talents that is to come in the War Within. This is hard. This is a hard title to
Doing
say.
great.
The War Within is gonna.
Dude, look, he's even got Rune of Power, dude, and the old shifting power.
Time. So the new hero spec for the Mage, the Frostfire Mage, gets my attention very much. I play with Fire Mage one time in Legion. I play with Frost Mage another time, and I will start my questions now. Can I?
Yeah, let's get
Yes,
to the
please,
questions.
Absolutely.
All right. We had a closer look to the talent trees of the Frostfire, right, for this interview, and I want to ask a few things. Let's go. So in the new hero talents, we had the Frostfire Mastery, and it was the first thing that catch my attention. I mean, that we have a buff for Mastery and Haste.
Yes.
Right? Can both Fire and Frost spells.
It's good that they didn't include crit, because that would be like super shitty for both specs.
Stack Mastery and Haste and be used simultaneously, or we're gonna have a buff called Frostfire Mastery that is both Haste and spells.
Two separate buffs, one for each school.
Right.
The intent is not that you're casting a bunch of the opposite stuff. If you're Frost, you're not casting a ton of extra fire spells, but more so
You're just getting it
fire procs
from your Frostfire bolt.
Frostfire bolts or
Yeah.
the procs from Frostfire Infusion.
It's just like a really okay. Yeah, I mean it's just a buff, right? You're just getting a buff.
Yeah, and,
So-
and just to add on, like
You
you
just-
might stack
It's almost like you could think of it like the fucking talent for Frost Mage, right? Where you just Slick Ice, like you just get a buff whenever you cast your builder. That part's not exciting because it's just like you just get a buff, right? What's important is what happens once you reach the maximum stacks.
one depending on what spec you are. You might stack one.
But yeah, this is a bit boring, that
little
part.
faster than the other. But you have things within the tree to help accumulate the other school's buff, right? So that
Yeah, Frostfire
ideally you're
Bolt,
still
the
gonna
Brandon
see
proc
these,
chance.
and be able to maintain them without.
You also have the
having
other spells they're proccing, like Living Bomb, like we talked about, Ice Nova, that sort of stuff as well.
having to
Meteor, Comet Storm. These are all going to also be giving you stacks.
dip too heavily into other schools of magic.
And they don't refresh the cooldown. Yes, it's 12 seconds if I recall correct. 12 seconds to get to the.
Depending on the cadence of how fast you can fill it, I could see a situation where you cancel it. Because 12 seconds is kind of a long time if you're in your cooldowns. And I could see you reaching max stacks on both of them in that 12 seconds. And then just sitting at max stacks. And it would probably be more beneficial to you to drop your stacks and then get them back. So they should probably make sure that you can't cancel Aura this buff.
8 stacks. I'm afraid about my eye twinkling every time I play a Frostfire Mage, like looking at the buffs is get the 8 stacks. I don't know, but yeah, if we have a lot of skills that we will implement, if I am a Frost Mage, I will have the Frostfire to catch up on the buff, the Fire Mastery buff, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you very much. And my next question, will the Mastery stats benefits change when you are Frostfire Mage, applying to both fire and frost spells? Like frost.
Hold on. These are
Got
pretty
it.
obvious
And I
answers, I think. Hold on. I'm
any
going to skip ahead.
should Also,
Sir?
yeah, we don't get into that. Just it really shouldn't feel like we're complicating your rotation any.
Hold on. I want to rewind what he just said.
Generally, Bolt should also gain those modifiers as well.
So Frostfire Bolt should gain the modifiers, he said.
That
We don't
definitely
wanna-
answer.
Yeah, we don't want to interrupt your rotation, right? Like
They don't
generally
want to
speaking,
change the
Fire
rotation.
And Frost have a pretty tight.
So basically, it's like a buff you're not even going to really pay too
rotation,
much attention
Yes.
to.
Thinking about heating up and hot streaks and
You're still playing your spec the normal way.
Combustion windows. We don't want to interrupt that, right? This
Yeah.
should feel seamless and it just inject a little extra
Seamless. I
flavor.
mean,
Um,
another way to say seamless is like not relevant, you know? But I'm trying not to be negative. I'm just saying like I think it's a good thing that you shouldn't have to like worry about it too much. Like there's too many ways that you have to worry about your stacks already as a mage, and I think it's good that you don't have to worry about like messing with the stacks, at least in their design intent. We'll have to see how it actually gets implemented, but the intent there is that you shouldn't have to worry about it.
a little bit of extra things to think about, but it really shouldn't feel like we're complicating your rotation anymore, right? We're not adding to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but yeah, this implements a little more things. I think it's turns a mastery with this. We build the rotation stay the same. It's just an implement of things, right?
Frostfire Bolt, you gain a proc of Frostfire Bolt or things like that. But it's not going
Alright.
to interrupt your rotation. It should feel.
Yeah, you'll just end up getting more procs. Like you'll have more Phoenix Flames to cast. You'll have more Brain Freezes to cast. Stuff's going to be happening passively. You're just going to get more stats. I mean, it's just like kind of strictly throughput, but there is the flavor of like using Frostfire Bolt. I think Frostfire Bolt looks cool. So like that's a nice little benefit.
Relatively seamless.
Okay. So what about the visual effects? I mean, would there be a new visual effect change, like when we had a talent called Imbued Warding, right? That is the Frost Armor. If you are a Frost Mage and cast Frost Armor, you will also
It's going to look like the Torghast effect.
cast Fire Armor, right? This will have a new visual effect of a conjunction of fire and frost, or will gonna be one on top of another, like was in Torghast. We had this. We have a talent that make all the armor things go one on top of the other, and it was actually pretty cool. It gives a cool effect.
be open to feedback on the shields part, but no current plans to adjust the visual from what it was before. But we do
So
have
yeah, it
plans
is gonna be
for a visual
Torghast.
update. Awesome.
The color change a little bit, maybe purple. I think with
Okay, I don't really care too much about the color.
That has a difference if you are a frost mage or if you are a fire mage. I myself can think that is because the balance of things for PvP and PvE, like frost spells like ice block can change a lot more of the gameplay like a fire spell.
Yeah.
But to give you the opportunity to clarify to every mage players why this difference between them, please.
You answered the question for me. It is a balance concern between the two. Common Storm has half the cooldown of Meteor, so we just need different tuning knobs there between the two.
Yeah.
And then for what was the other one? Elemental Affinity, the cooldown reduction. Frost does not have access to as many fire spells as Fire has access to frost spells. So we're still trying to figure out the exact numbers there, but we want them to be different so that the balance between them makes a bit more sense if you're
yeah, that's the reason why the percentages are different.
But that gives me one more question. We're gonna have there's any news about new spells like new fire spell for frost mage or new frost spells for fire mage in the rotation to add more aside the frost firebolt, of course.
Yeah, when we're when we're talking about hero talents, I think what you see is kind of what you get. So when we look at frostfire bolt would be the new one. We're not necessarily looking to inject any new abilities right now. That could change, but at the moment we're really focused on getting hero talents into as polished of a state as they can be when they become publicly testable, so we can start iterating on that feedback. Right now, when you look at, a lot of the reason why we did these hero talent trees is when you look at the talent revamp.
Yeah, it's just
Dragonflight, it added a lot of abilities to most of the classes, right? And for a lot of people, that
it's just throughput. It's just throughput. They're not changing how you play. They're not adding new abilities. Some things are interesting, but I think they are a little boring. Okay, let's talk with Dorvan about this. Hold on. I'm gonna get a call set up here. And we'll hop in together and see if we can get maybe some fresh perspective here, maybe things that I missed. All right, chat. Let's see. Oh, I should probably change my Discord settings too. 1 second. Push to talk. Okay, yeah. So I mean, impressions. Let's get a poll. Let's get a poll going. So, how are we feeling? How do we feel about Frostfire hero talents? Love it. It's neat. Okay, and we'll put this poll up for 10 minutes. All right. So yeah, put your answer in the poll there. I want to get kind of an idea of where y'all are at in the chat. I know Arshand is very excited about these talents. He's said it a couple times. I'd be curious to see what everyone else is feeling when it comes to these ones. Yeah, by far the most exciting thing for me personally so far is isothermic core. This thing is really exciting. I can't say I'm really too keen on the rest of it. I think it's pretty cool, but Not sure if much of it really is speaking to me here. Oh, here, Wowhead has a concise write-up of it. So it says, below you'll find the highlights from the interview organized by topic, designing choices and tuning Frostfire Mastery with 2 separate buffs, one for each school, so you're not supposed to cast a lot of fire spells as Frost, or vice versa. You're just going to get your stacks by casting your spells normally. There are other tools within the Frostfire Hero talent tree to help you with accumulating stacks. Yada yada. We already talked about this. Can you shatter Meteor? Yes. Meteor is whitelisted from Winter's Chill, which is potentially the most broken thing about this, because you could always have a Winter's Chill up for whenever you Comet Storm. That's the proper way that you want to Comet Storm. Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
1 second, let me get you tuned up here. So, once I get your audio fixed, can you give me a testing?
Testing? Is this good?
I think so. Chat, how are we feeling? Is this good? One more time.
Testing?
Okay. I boosted you a little bit. Chat says it's good. Why don't you really quickly? I already said that you are the Wowhead guide writer for Frostmage. Can you give us just a little bit more of an introduction, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. As you said, I'm currently the Frostmage writer at Wowhead, and historically, I've been a raider in BDG, Big Dumb Guild, and an analyst for the last expansion for them as well. And I've been playing this game for a very long time. I'm also a simulation craft developer. Spend a lot of time getting Mage working well in there.
You know, it's funny.
That's
I think. Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's funny. I think most of my Evoker fans out there who play probably know you from the cast bar too, because you are the one who made the cast bar that we have with the little red ticks and all that. So yeah, also doing the weak aura stuff. Cool. So I went over the talents already. I've also kind of scrubbed through the interview, although I didn't really get too much out of that. I'll say in general, the talents, just to kind of lay a foundation here. I feel like it's neat. I'm not really super excited by them, but I think in terms of the hero talents I've seen so far, which I just covered the priest ones, I've also covered the Chrono Warden ones. These seem like kind of the cooler of the bunch that I've seen so far, but also not really going to change too much, although I could see some interesting aspects with shattering meteor and stuff like that. But yeah, I wanted to kind of get your take. So scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for these new Frostmage talents? And I guess what is your favorite thing or your biggest highlight you've seen so far?
I'd say I'd probably give these an 8 or so. I think they're pretty good. There's some room for improvement and some problems with them, but those can obviously be fixed over time. And I think what I like the most about them is just thematically, there's a lot of actual procs and visuals in here that you're going to be having, where you're actually using both elements. And so it's not like Disciplinary Command and Shadowlands where you're using all the schools, but not really. It's just an annoying maintenance buff.
Yeah, I agree. There's obviously a lot of questions I have about this tree, kind of scrubbing through it and looking at for instance, Frostfire Infusion, having the proc chance, but also having the instant cast, really hoping that instant cast doesn't get gobbled up by that proc. But I assume stuff like that will probably get figured out and hashed out during beta. But just shooting off random extra bolts seems kind of cool. I'm definitely down with that, especially if it's bolts that may not necessarily look like my normal spells, kind of adding in extra elements there. So I don't know about you, but whenever I played Mage, I actually started playing in Wrath of Lich King, and Frostfire Bolt was kind of a neat spell. I definitely liked it a lot. So I think the aesthetic is very strong here, but aside from the aesthetic and I guess the feeling of it, I feel like it's kind of you're just kind of getting buffs. I don't really feel like there's too much else going on there. So I'd probably give it probably also a 6 out of 10 overall. Cool. So you didn't answer. What's your most exciting node if you had to just name one here?
Let's see. That's a difficult one. I guess it doesn't really do that much mechanically, but I really like imbued warding, just because if you read the article I wrote for Wowhead, one of the things I wanted was visuals from both barriers in one when you're playing this hero tree.
Yeah.
And so that's just nice to actually see that in there. I'd prefer if they made new visuals so that if you're a Frostfire Mage, then you have a hint of frost in your barrier and vice versa. But just having both is already a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, it looked really cool whenever you're running Torghast, right? And you had like all of your berries up, so like kind of similar effect there. Although I think with this talent, like it's just like 25% more effectiveness, right? Like it's not like we're getting precision barrier on this at all, right? Like we're not getting like the arcane barrier, which is like the good one that we could potentially get. So
it does make it compete with that one very much, though. I think just being 25% stronger.
Yeah, 25% stronger, and also affecting mass barrier too. I mean, mass barrier is already so strong, and adding 25% effectiveness to that's kind of nutty. Also, I feel like Meltdown is funny because I would be way more excited about Meltdown if we didn't have Ice Cold. But like having just a slight movement increase on Ice Cold, it's like, okay, well, in most cases when I'm using Ice Cold, I'm standing still. So that doesn't really do much for me. It's nice, but and then the Blast Wave is probably going to be out in range, so I probably won't even hit anything with that. In fact, I would probably say that Blast Wave is going to probably cause more problems than it does good for you. But yeah, cool. Okay. So yeah, obviously, like we're getting this buff. Really happy that they chose Haste and Mastery, by the way, and not Crit, because I was just thinking about like how much of a disaster this would be if one of those buffs was Crit, since it's Fire and Frost that we're discussing here. But let's talk about Isothermic Core. So this is by far the most exciting part of this entire tree, and I saw some chatter before, and I was kind of thinking about this myself. Like obviously, Comet Storm is the way that we use it right now as Frost. Is we are throwing out a flurry so that we have Winter's Chill active. Comet Storm is whitelisted by our Winter's Chill, so it's going to shatter, and that's how we use this spell. And this is now adding on a Meteor at 100% effectiveness, and Meteor is a very hard-hitting spell, and that's going to be shattering too. So, what's your take on this node?
Overall, it's, I think, good. The one thing I don't like about it is it sort of forces you into Comet Storm and Meteor as talents even more than you already might be.
Yeah.
They're fun to play with in general, so I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see what the actual talents look like, because I was thinking about this too, like Firefall, for instance, right? Like this is such a strong talent for Fire that we like literally give away 2 talent points just to reach it.
Yeah.
With Living Bomb
kind of
and
hope
Convection.
This doesn't work with Firefall.
If it does, I mean, Firefall's like pretty much a lock-in. I would be happy with like picking Meteor more, just like natural picking it, you know, just going down the tree and actually selecting it. But also, yeah, it doesn't feel good whenever you have capstones that are already good, that you're already picking all the time, and now you're adding even more incentive to always take that capstone. Kind of feels like you're reducing the ability to even break out of like the dead talent problem that Fire Mage has in the capstone area. So that part's definitely a negative. But I will say the prospect of like getting these meteors for free or these comet storms for free is like really fun. Or like I'm excited by the idea. So also I'm gonna laugh because this is gonna be so funny in PvP. I can just see it now. They're gonna have to do something about the PvP scaling on this thing.
Yeah, probably.
Cool.
It's another good example though of like the main thing I was saying I like about this tree, where it's just like aesthetically this tree is really good, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's gonna look so cool, right? Because like anytime you throw a comet storm, a giant meteor is gonna drop down with it. Same goes for Meteor dropping with like the Comet Storm. It's going to look awesome. It's also going to be really, really maddening if the tank like moves during your Comet Storm, even more so than it is now. Can you miss Meteor, by the way? I don't know how that works. Like if you proc like a Firefall, can you miss it?
Yeah, you can. The target would have to be moving pretty fast, but it could miss.
Yeah, not as bad as Comet Storm, but okay. Yeah, I mean, either way, though, you're going to have Comet Storm in the mix, so you're going to still suffer, I guess, even as a Fire Mage if the tank makes a erratic movement there. Okay, so I actually thought this was pretty interesting. So excess Frost, excess Fire, obviously these are mirrored, right? Fire gets Phoenix Flame, does Ice Nova, and then Frost is getting Flurry, does Ice Nova, and then Fire gets Fire Blast, does Living Bomb. And then Frost gets Living Bomb at 100% effectiveness. This begs the question. Okay, so we have a buff, right? It stacks to 8. It lasts 12 seconds. It does not refresh duration. What we can assume is that the maximum time to reach stacks is probably less than 12 seconds. We probably will spend less than 12 seconds reaching the maximum of these stacks based on what we know, right? Especially since Frost Firebolt is slightly faster cast than Fireball. Just using like Fire as an example. And we're also going to be proccing constant other stuff, right? Now, here's where I'm concerned. This is a really long buff to me based on the design of this, because the incentive is to reach max stacks, but it cannot refresh duration. So what? I wonder if they're going to add protection on this, so you can't just click it off. Because
Yeah,
I feel
it would
like
be a
you
good
would,
idea.
because you would totally like in your cooldowns, you would just click this thing off, especially like double us. Like you would definitely just click this off so that you could get more procs of excess frost, excess fire. You're going to be
Especially
getting
with
both.
the like ultimate talent you haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
That would be another case where you cancel it.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten the flash freeze burn, but yeah, another additive in it. Well, also because you're going to be using your cooldowns too, which is always going.
Specifically, that one just sets you to max stacks. So if you can cancel it, you'll always cancel it before pressing that. If you are like we're already max.
At least in that case, you're not like having a dedicated cancel my stacks macro. You could just like include it in your icy veins or combustion macro. But yeah, I see this as like I really hope that they add that protection that they do on certain spells where you can't get rid of it, because that seems to me like maybe a problem. Either way though, so let's assume that you can't abuse it, right? The benefit here, it's hard to quantify, but we're just getting like a lot of extra like little hits, and I guess we could just say like 8% more haste, 8% more mastery. We don't know how much damage coefficient Frostfire is going to have, Frostfire Bolt, but I assume it's going to be somewhat similar to Frostbolt and Fireball, where it's like, you know, if you multiply by like 70%, then maybe it's good, but otherwise it's like kind of small.
Yeah, I think it's intended, at least on single target, to be our filler spell still.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting though, because we also have like the it's going to critically strike and explode like that. Obviously for fire, this seems like a lot more interesting, because it means you're going to have a guaranteed heating up or hot streak from it. Whereas for frost, it's like, okay, well, you wouldn't have to shatter it if you proc that, right? Like that's really the only thing I could see when it comes to gameplay. It seems like overall though, and they even kind of said this in the interview, they aren't really wanting you to change how you play based on these talents. This is kind of just like a cherry on top, I guess.
Yeah, I think the only awkward thing for Frost about Frostfire empowerment is that, like, normally in your rotation, you cast Frostbolt and then Flurry, so that you're benefiting from like all three opportunities you have to benefit from Winter's Chill. And if your Frostbolt were instant cast, like Frostfire Bolt will be in this case, unless you have Glacial Spike ready, there's no way to get benefit from that first part of Winter's Chill.
Exactly.
Which feels kind of bad, although numerically, I don't think it's necessarily like a bad thing. It's just a playstyle change a little bit.
Yeah, kind of similar to it could also, I think, catch you off guard as fire too in certain cases, especially if you have like a lot of haste, because you'd run into the situation kind of like where whenever you're above 100% haste and you like use Scorch, you have like too much haste, and then it kind of like screws up having both your spells hit at the same time and give you like a hot streak back. So kind of a similar problem. Both specs kind of suffer from this like travel time issue, where you have to have your spells kind of hitting in a certain cadence to get like your crits back and all that. I guess it's less of an issue for fire, but still somewhat there. But yeah, no, kind of interesting design decision. Not really sure how I feel about it. 80% of its damage to nearby enemies sounds fun, but I don't know how much damage it does in the first place, so who cares? But
the main
also,
reason I think it's good to have this talent, at least in some form, is if you think about AoE situations for Fire and Frost. It's like Fire, you could play an Ignite build and you'd be casting Fireball or Frostfire Bolt. But for a Flamestrike build or for Frost, you don't want to press Frostbolt or Fireball. And so how do you even get the other like school stacks if on AoE?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think this also does like definitely lend itself more to the Ignite build too, just like looking overall at the talents. But no, 100%. Because it's Frost, yeah, I mean, you're mainly going to be throwing out Frozen Orbs, Blizzards, using Comet Storms. I guess those would proc like Meteors, but still that's like way less common than just like using your builder.
Yeah, when you do get Frostfire Empowerment, you will press the button as Frost, but you're not going to be getting very many fire stacks, I don't think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that feels a little bad, just because Excess Fire and Excess Frost are kind of, at least a bit, geared towards AoE, because they cast an AoE spell. So it's a little weird that you're sort of, as Fire, not really generating Frost stacks, and as Frost, not really generating fire stacks on AoE.
But then on the flip side, it's kind of nice, because it would mean an AoE pretty much like you have this filler spell that's like usually going to be up, right? Because like if you aren't pressing it, it would be pretty much always up, and you could just have like an instant caster to throw out there. I don't know. I like the idea of like having more instant cast, but I also feel like Fire specifically like has like so many instant casts already. Like so much of the rotation is already just instant cast. If you don't even account for like having like ice flows or shimmer, you're talking about like over 60-70% of your spells are instant casts that you're pressing normally. So like, I don't know, you're closely approaching like a BM situation. But yeah, pretty interesting. Definitely will be one of those things we have to kind of like look at once we get our hands on it. So moving on to another topic here. So the choice node elemental affinity versus flame and frost. So I was looking over this one, and it definitely seemed interesting to me, the difference here. I mean, obviously, like, we don't know what all spells Frost is going to have access to their fire right now, aside from like what we have as current talents. We can just make assumptions. But whenever I was looking at Flame and Frost, like Cauterize resetting the cooldown of your Frost spells, I was thinking like Ice Flows is totally a Frost spell. So that would refresh Ice Flows. Obviously, it wouldn't do Ice Block because Ice Block is too long for it. The base duration is 4 minutes. But yeah, I don't know. This one's interesting. I definitely feel like Frost is getting kind of like the short end of the stick here unless you can get a Cauterize reset, which, you know, they don't have access to Cauterize as far as we know.
I don't completely disagree that, or I don't completely agree there, because Cold Snap resetting the fire spells, if you're doing like a Mythic Plus dungeon or a raid where you need lots of AoE stops,
yeah,
Blast Wave and Dragon's Breath, you can do like 4 stops yourself.
That's a good point.
Very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. So that would be really great. But then using your like defensive for your like stops, I guess it kind of feels bad, but in a way you can kind of already do this with like shifting power too. Like you can have more than one interrupt because you could just interrupt, shifting power, interrupt again. So I guess it kind of like falls in line with that. But obviously if you go elemental affinity instead as fire, you're just going to get 10% more ice flows because you're reducing the cooldown on all your frost spells, I assume. That one's flagged as
10% more ice block too, which is nice.
10% more ice block, yeah. Very nice, very nice. And then I don't know how they're going to flag it, but I was... it also could potentially work with your barriers too. I mean, it says that Blazing Barrier also casts it. I don't know how they're going to like do this on the back end, but I could see, since it's doing both, maybe there being some sort of tie-in. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, it definitely really interesting. As Frost 2, like having the cooldown reduction on fire spells just be a flat 30%. That sounds to me like if I was doing dungeons, like obviously having Cold Snap situationally, like being able to get the extra stops out like in the moment is really, really nice. Giving up the defensiveness for it, not so nice. But just having like 30% more of it is just like really strong too. Since you already have cooldown reduction talents for like Dragon's Breath, for instance, right?
Yeah, definitely. The Cold Snap part I more see as being like if you're like in a raid or some pack is really hard and you just want to completely solo it yourself and not have to worry about your group, that's when you'd use the Cold Snap option, I think.
Yeah, just think about P2 on Ferric, right? Like obviously everyone has engineering belts anyways, but like Blast Wave flings mobs really far, and you could do a Blast Wave and then immediately Cold Snap Blast Wave again. Pretty cool. So, I mean, that one's actually pretty interesting. It's not really damage oriented at all, but I think it's still pretty exciting. I was trying to think if there was anything that would like be a damage component to this, but I guess we'll have to wait and see like what ends up on the talent tree. Also, Living Bomb being like as part of Excess Fire, that could proc for Frost without them actually having access to the talent, but since the other one is Ice Nova, I feel like maybe we'll see some changes in the talent tree. At least I hope we'll see some changes.
Maybe, yeah, we'll see. Currently, I think that's just a proc, but...
Yeah. Cool. And then, so moving on from there, yeah, so we already talked about the middle column here, Frostfire Empowerment. Frostfire Infusion, having a chance to trigger additional Frostfire Bolt. I mean, this is just cool. It's just like added flavor, just flinging out the Frostfire Bolts. I imagine they'll just shoot out kind of like an icicle. But I you know, aesthetically, like Frostfire looks cool, and this one's actually pretty exciting to me, even though it doesn't really change anything. It is nice. I'd be curious to know if this interacts with like heating up and hot streak at all, but yeah, kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. I would guess it doesn't interact with anything, and it's just completely different from the regular Frostfire Bolt.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, because that'd be really like we were talking about before. If it munched your Frostfire Empowerment, that'd be really annoying. Or if it like munched a Winter's Chill, or like did something else like that, it would definitely make more sense if it was like icicle kind of situation.
I think that's probably just meant as a way, especially like in AoE, like I was talking about, to help you get more stacks of the other school like more reliably.
Yeah,
but we'll have to see what the proc, like the RNG type and everything is on that.
Like we don't know their intent, but I can only assume that like their intent, since they have the does not refresh duration and it lasts 12 seconds and 8 stacks maximum. I'm assuming that they're probably thinking behind the scenes like this is how much on average you should be reaching in 12 seconds. At least that's like my my impression of it. But yeah, who knows what the proc rates will end up being.
Yeah, it's potentially going to make haste a really important stat for both specs, just so that you can get max stacks more reliably because you get so many bonuses if you are consistently hitting max stacks.
Yeah, I mean, haste would literally give you more haste, right? So it's like a...
Yeah, especially for Frost with the one in the bottom right. I forgot what it's called, but excess fire. Excess fire is really good for Frost, and so anything you can do to get more fire stacks, like getting more.
Oh yeah,
haste,
yeah.
I think very important rotationally.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but I wanted to bring this up too. Phoenix Flame reduction by 10 seconds. I'm like, okay, cool. But but Living Bomb giving you brain freeze after it explodes. Now that is sick. Because that just means so much more brain freeze procs that you're going to be getting as Frost. And that, it definitely feels like this might even change some of the logic if you're playing Glacial Spike, if you're just getting like a lot more brain freezes. It definitely could just like change little things about the rotation. I think like having more brain freeze is always good. Although it'll be interesting to see like what this ends up playing like. We'll have to actually see it in person. But maybe it'll help a little bit too with like the start of expansion woes. I mean, you know how it is. Like whenever a new expansion comes out and you're playing Mage, it just kind of feels bad to like not have the secondary stats where they need to be. Especially like like fire, because you got like no crit, and then you're like trying to put everything into haste, and even then like your haste is still pretty low, and you just kind of feel like obviously it's not gonna like have the effects and damage that people meme about, like, oh well, Mage scale's really high as the patch goes on. It's not really that. It's more so like the feeling of the spec just kind of feels off. At least that's just me. So hopefully it helps in that regard. But yeah, no, these are pretty cool. So yeah, thanks for giving me your thoughts on this. Anything else that you were kind of thinking up while you're looking at this stuff that we didn't talk about?
I don't think so, really.
Yeah, I suspect that this one, I'm hoping that Sun Fury ends up being more interesting. Just personally, like I hope that there's like more to it than this one. But I also can't really complain too much if it's just like passive flavor, because I feel like, you know, for fire, which is primarily what I'm focusing on, like there's already a lot going on. There's already a lot of buffs you're tracking. I appreciate that they're not putting more on my plate to track more buffs, but we don't know if that's actually going to be the reality of it. We can only assume that based on their intent that that's what they mean, is that you shouldn't be tracking extra buffs. But yeah, either way though, interesting too to see that nothing really is interacting with, I guess we have the one with like the movement on Ice Block, but there's not really too much aside from throughput here, and some little defensive stuff with imbued warding, but aside from that, it's mostly just damage throughput. They said, I don't know if you caught this before, but they said that they want to shoot for all the hero talents being like 25% damage increase. So all of them should be roughly about that number.
I see. That's good to know. I didn't pay attention to that before.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely be interested to see. I think definitely the one that's making bigger waves right now is just the the priest one with all the PI.
The external tree.
Yeah, that sounds like a kind of a nightmare. But anyways, yeah, thanks for chat. Any closing words?
I don't think so. I guess I'd want to re-highlight the fact that my one big concern with this tree is how it interacts with AoE right now. Since Frostfire Bolt is a single target spell, and is everything in the tree is very like tied to Frostfire Bolt being a spell you actually press.
Yeah, that's very true. At least Fire has a variant where like you don't really worry about that in AoE, but definitely concerning for Frost. Yeah, 100%.
It is good for Fire though that it does mean that it's kind of, if you think of Frostfire Bolt as Fireball, it's kind of forcing you to press Fireball more on single target rather than trying to like find PF only rotations, for example, where you don't press Fireball, which I think aren't necessarily the healthiest design for the spec.
Do you know if just like a random question, but okay, so Fireball cast time is like slightly longer than 2 seconds, right? And this one's like 2-second cast, but it's not that big of a difference. But I could see it being a bigger, I guess, problem potentially. Like once we are doing like Temporal Warp Bloodlust shenanigans.
Yeah, potentially. Oh, actually, you just made me, for some reason, I forgot to mention this. Remember something very important, which is Frostfire Bolt going to be snapshotting on cast or on impact? Because for Frost, it kind of has to snapshot on impact, but for Fire, that would make it play a bit differently, like around combustion, for example.
Yeah, it'd be like Phoenix Flame, where you'd like be a little careful about using it late. Interesting.
Or you could do something like Frostfire Bolt Meteor and then wait a moment and then combust. start your combustion.
Why would it matter for Frost? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so Frost, when you're like doing Frostbolt Flurry, for example, because Frostbolt snapshots on impact, Flurry has time to get to the target and apply Winter's Chill, so they can then benefit from Shatter.
That makes
Whereas if
sense.
it's snapshot on cast for Frostfire Bolt, you wouldn't. It would be when you finish the cast is Winter's Chill on the target rather than when it hits, which would feel much weirder.
Yeah, totally. Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. Yep, well, it could potentially work both ways too, but yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see what it ends up looking like. But yeah, let's do another talk once we get more information. But appreciate you again.
Yep.
All right,
Thanks
have a
for
good
having
one.
me.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Awesome. So that again was Dorovan. He is the Wowhead guide writer for Frost Mage, and also prolific author of Weak Auras, does log stuff, APL stuff, Simcraft, does all the big brain stuff. Also played in BDGG. Appreciate his opinions all the time. I don't know, he didn't plug anything, but you know where to find him. You can go, I think if you just search on Twitch for Dorovan, you should be able to find something. I don't know if he streams much, but either way, always appreciate his time. Okay, so yeah, I mean, what else is there to say about this spec? I mean, it really doesn't, the substance isn't really there for us yet. Definitely bringing up a lot of questions, but I think in terms of the hero towns we've seen so far, probably the least amount of questions I've had by at least just kind of looking at it, getting a feel for it. I agree that there's probably going to be some areas where this is going to feel weird, especially like for Frost and AoE. Could be a situation where maybe you play in Raid, maybe you don't play in Mythic Plus. I could see that, right? We do have access to 2 different hero talents for each spec. Each spec has 2. So there could be a situation where you may play one strictly in Raid and one strictly in Mythic Plus. In fact, I would go so far as to say that that's probably going to be the default for most classes. Like, just knowing how these things always pan out, Blizzard has said that they're shooting for 25% increase on your class's throughput through the talents, but you'll have to wait and see where it actually ends up. We don't know where the damage is going to end up being for this stuff. So we'll have to just wait and see. But anyways, let's see the poll results. So how are people feeling about the new talents? Did we ever get an answer on that poll here? 1 second. Let me get it pulled up here. What was the result, chat? I missed it. I don't think it's still up anymore. I'm not sure if I can check it. Oh, wait. What is this, Argitan? What are you linking? Baseline cast, Frostfire has faster cast than Fireball, but same as Frostbolt. Yeah, so Frostbolt has issues with double lust. That's why I was kind of thinking maybe this could be a bit of a problem if you're doing double lust shenanigans as fire. I hope they just kind of get rid of the temporal warp stuff. I'm not a huge fan of temporal warp. I think it should just probably go away. I don't like it. Yeah, just cast one or the other. Yeah. Yeah, definitely interesting. Okay, cool. Well, that's really all I had planned for today. I just wanted to kind of briefly go over this stuff. It ended up being a little bit less substantive than I was expecting, to be honest with you, but I still think it is awesome and exciting. I don't want to diminish my excitement over it. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what Sun Fury looks like, what Spellslinger looks like. Those are going to be hopefully a little bit more exciting than what we see here. But anyways, I'm going to probably cut up what we did today and post it on YouTube. I have another YouTube video that I was actually filming right as this news broke, and I like hopped over to quickly go online and talk about this stuff. But talking about some augmentation and devastation woes. Can't wait to get my hands on the hero talents in beta. Yeah, same. Oh, look at the druid tree. This is funny because it's like the square since they had 4 builds. That's cool. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about these other ones too much though. We already talked about priest, so I feel like we got our fill there. But okay, yeah. So I'll just wrap it up. So anyways, thank you for watching. And I'm going to get back to work, but I will see y'all in the next one. All right. Bye, everyone.